All right, guys. Happy Monday. Hope everybody had a good weekend. Um, I have posted comments on lesson 7 on the wasteland, and I just want to reassure you that was the hardest reading we do all semester, that particular lesson. Um, so, y'all did fine. One thing I would recommend is uh, we still really want to work on the specificity of word choice. So what I'm going to ask each of you to do is after you write the post to go back through it and maybe highlight or underline phrases that you would guess that I might mark as being vague or abstract. Just give it one final go before you turn in the final version and try that revision process. That's really the way to make sure that you're being as specific as possible. So I will post comments on lesson 8 on Wednesday. This week, uh, we circle back to the modernist poetry. Most of it is not anywhere near, well, none of it is anywhere near as difficult as The Wasteland or Ezra Pound. The main thing we do in lesson 9 is sort of encourage you to make a chart or a sort of axis where you would put the modernist poets in terms of the level of difficulty versus the level of accessibility. So those poets really help you fill in some of the variety and the different ways that modernist poets that were writing in the first half of the 20th century use different techniques and devices. Um, People, although the major ones were fragmentation, juxtaposition, and illusion, people used them in different ways. They tweaked them with other types of innovations. So you just want to be aware of the variety, how E. Cummings might be different from Ezra Pound, or certainly how Robert Frost, who's the most accessible of all of the poets we look at, is way different than T.S. Eliot. The middle gets a little complicated. Where would you put Marianne Moore as opposed to Hilda Doolittle? That can be a little debatable. But probably the most difficult one to really understand what's going on is Wallace Stevens' Sunday Morning. But again, just think in terms of images. Don't read for a story. Read more for what the mood brings out in you. Lesson 10 is probably my favorite of this class because it's about the Harlem Renaissance. It's a celebratory type of literature. It's looking at the probably the most celebrated period in Black literature in America, the 1920s, when artists like Zora Neale Hurston, who's originally from Alabama, and and Langston Hughes and others were really doing a more joyous sort of Black literature, not a protest literature as much as we've seen so far. So, and most of that stuff is very accessible. Again, I would encourage you as you're going along to make sure, not as you're reading, make sure you're absorbing these things. And it's always good to, even though I'm giving you written lectures, that you jot down notes, or that I find that writing things down helps helps them sort of get into my mind a little bit more. That's really one of the big things that we're working on, is reading comprehension, because it's just so we've moved so far away from engaged reading in the world today, that it's very difficult for us to read anything and understand what we're seeing, but literature makes it much more difficult. So overall, it's a pretty easy week in terms of the readings, in terms of the ability to get into them. Do go over the lectures. I give you a lot of information about each particular author in there, give you some background, help you set the context, give you a little bit of trivia even for your money. Exam 2 will open Friday, but again, it'll be open for 10 days. So I want people to wait and begin studying next week And I know next week is Thanksgiving, but since we're all on lockdown, it's going to be a very different Thanksgiving anyway. But, start working towards studying next week. And then it will try to finish it up by it actually be 2 weeks from tomorrow. So we have a lot of time for exam 2. But we are more than halfway through the class now. Again, overall, I'm relatively pleased with everybody's progress. Most of the folks that are posting are taking my advice, and I do see improvement there. I see the effort and improvement. So right now, again, what I'm really going to encourage is a little bit more revision after you do the draft, because it's that stage between drafting and revision where you really find um, what your main point is. And again, think of those thesis statements as emphasizing not presence, not there are these characteristics in the work, but function. These characteristics do X. And that becomes your point, is to prove what these devices or this theme does. So if you have any questions, drop me a line. Otherwise, I will post comments on Lesson 8 on Wednesday. And have a good week. Thank you.